on organizing in our core industries. It's critical. Yes, we have to, I believe in working on legislation through having members lobbying, through mobilizing our members, educating them, not paying lobbyists to go to Washington and deal with these issues. We need to have our own people out there demanding these things and reaching out to FedEx workers. We can organize without the law for a while. You don't need to have, you can start building a union at FedEx before you change this law.
Response on FedEx from Ken Hall.
Well, Sandy, if you have that list you've had from years ago, I wish you'd share it with us. But the legislation, I've been there at every step. So the legislation that you're talking about, you know that we have to change the law. We lacked 5 Republican votes to be able to change that law, to take them from under the Railway Labor Act over the past year. And we worked tirelessly to do that. While you, Sandy, in your local, have you and one other member who participates in our political action fund. And Fred, yours is the lowest joint council participation in the entire country. We are working to organize FedEx. We have launched a FedEx Freight campaign in the West. Once again, it's people who say, I don't like your idea, but they don't have one. And let me say, Sandy, that is the biggest lack of leadership with your answer. We'll ask the members if they want to go back. Did you ask your members if they wanted you to cut their benefits?
Okay, time there. And response from Fred Jaguar on FedEx.
I agree with regards to taking on FedEx, but getting back to the pension issue, Ken Hall lied to this body here tonight, saying that I met with UPS and I supported allowing UPS out of Central States. Furthest thing from the truth. Like I told the young man that came up there and asked me the question, why I didn't do anything in 06. Remember, go back now, I says, April of 07, I was dispatched, that deal was cut. I didn't invite UPS to that meeting, Hoff and Hall did. I had to bring Tom Nyhan, my executive director, and my actuary to that meeting because they already had the deal cut. How can I meet with UPS when I don't even negotiate their contract? It was a done deal by Hoff and Hall.
Okay, time. And the next question comes from me, and it goes to Ken Hall. This is a multi-part question. If the consent decree were lifted, would you continue to have members elect the Teamsters national officers, or would you revert to having the convention elect them, as it did before the decree? And, as I said, it's multi-part. If you continue to have the members vote, would you continue to keep the current threshold of 5% support from convention delegates as a precondition for running for national office, or would you raise it? And would you try to retain the position of the independent election officer?
Frankly,
I can repeat those as we go if needs be.
I'm going to try to take them one at a time.
Okay.
Let me be very clear. First and foremost, I would continue to support a direct election by membership. We are the most democratic union in the country, and we're going to continue to be that. In terms of the, if we looked at what the threshold was, I think we should look at what is a normal threshold. What do we look at for other unions? What is any other union that's under those same conditions, and do whatever is the average. Is 5% pretty low? Yes, we've demonstrated over the years that people who can't muster much more than 5% have not been very effective in trying to win election, and it costs our organization $10 to $12 million for somebody just to decide to run when they don't have any ground support to begin with. So that would be something I would consider, but clearly we are always going to have a democratic vote by our members.
Fred Jaguar on member voting and threshold of convention support.
Yeah, I believe in members' participation in voting, but we have to look at this whole structure. What's happening in this election, if you see what's happening, we're paying $320,000 a month to the election officer to conduct an open, honest, and fair election for our membership. And as far as I'm concerned, when Ken Hall, Jim Hoffa, Tyson Johnson, and Roma Lois all tried to bribe people off of my ticket and conspired to steal $1 million of the membership's dues money, and then the election officer puts out a ruling after the 8-month investigation. There was corruption, there was misleading statements, there was not truthfulness. They tried to disrupt the investigation, and all they said to these people was that cease and desist. Give me a break. This ain't an open, honest, fair election.
Okay. Sandy Pope on member voting on delegate threshold of conventions and election officer.
I'm the only person here who's been consistently fighting for the right to, for the rank and file to elect directly the officers. And I would say that when I got 50,000 signatures out of the 300,000 people that voted the last time, 1/6 of the people signed petitions for me. 100,000 people voted for me in the last election out of 300,000. So no, I don't think that that's a low threshold, too low of a threshold at all. And what's important here is accountability, and for the members to feel that they can, that the elected officers are accountable to them. And that's why we need to continue with the same threshold and with the supervision until we can show we can police ourselves.
Next question comes from Michelle Amber, and it goes to Fred Jaguar.
In your campaign literature, you've been calling for a more militant union as well as organizing more in core industries. Do you think the union strike fund and its organizing budget need to be enlarged? And if so, how would you do that since you support freezing members' dues?
By organizing more members, more dues paying members. The more revenue you bring in, the more per capita, 22%. Yeah, I believe in organizing in the core industry. You have to understand the big picture here, what's going on in our building in Washington here. Construction is a lame duck right now. Public sector is a lame duck right now. They're basically not getting anything done. There's no uniformity in communications. You don't see any conferences being held with people making them be accountable towards Article 12, Section 10 of the Constitution, where you keep parity. Right now you got members fighting against other local unions, scratch that, local unions fighting against other local unions for jurisdiction. We don't have any leadership. We gotta have these divisions fully funded, fully staffed, and supporting and assisting the local unions. Because I don't believe in a dues increase. And I'm not gonna raise the membership's dues because of the sheer fact is that you have to learn to give more autonomy to the local union and the joint councils. And you have to look at the revenue you got to deal with. Remember, Hoffa collected $172 million in 2010, spent $212 million. And I think he mismanaged our fund. He put us in harm's way, and it's a matter of public record. Go on to the Department of Labor's website. You'll see our expenditures for 2010. And that's because you're bringing in so many outsiders. We don't need these outsiders. Your best bang for the buck is the member.
Okay. Sandy Pope on increasing strike funds and organizing funds and levels of dues.
I've been accused of losing the assets of my local. I didn't lose those assets. I spent them on organizing one of the biggest food warehouses in our area that was in competition. And if we had a warehouse division that had more than 2 staff people for the biggest division in the union, if we had coordination between the locals, and if we had organizing funds, whether it's co-ops between locals, we would have been able to tackle that as a group. Instead, my local was forced to spend this money on my own. And then the second time we were promised money, and then suddenly the organizing department ran out of money and staff to help us after we stuck our necks out on organizing. That's not how it should go. We need to turn that around and help the local unions and coordinate for organizing and enforcing the contracts.
Response from Ken Hall.
Sandy, the record reflects you had $2.1 million in 2005. By 2010, you had $300,000, and it's still sinking. To suggest that you used all that in an organizing campaign is ludicrous. And by the way, here's a letter signed by you on January 29, 2008 to the General President, thanking him for all the work that the IBT did in assisting you in those organizing campaigns. So I guess you are also having some memory problems. And I want to be clear about the public sector, Fred. You've got to be kidding me. Jim Hoffa came to Wisconsin in ground zero when you were in Florida and in Southern California campaigning. You came back and finally campaigned in Wisconsin and got busted by the election officer for using Fred Jaguar signs at that campaign. You didn't spend a penny of your money, your PAC money in Wisconsin on this rerun election for our own members.
Okay. The next question comes from Michelle Amber, and it goes to Sandy Pope.
Your local has just over 1,000 members. The international union has 1.3 million. Do you have the kind of experience leading a major organization that you'd need as president of the Teamsters?
Absolutely. The head of this union needs to be the chief bargainer, the chief field operative, the person who is leading with a vision, with a strategy for how we're going to fight back, how we're going to deal with companies like UPS that are tearing our members apart, how we're going to fight production standards, how we're going to organize new members. I have done every single one of those things. I have organized, I have bargained contracts with major corporations. I fought Mayor Bloomberg and won. Not too many union leaders can say that. So there's a lot of things that I have done. That's the type of leadership we need as general president. I don't have to be the chief administrator. That's what Ken Hall and other people are going to be doing. I'm the one that's got to lead the way for how we're going to rebuild the Teamsters Union and lead the rest of the labor movement.
Response from Fred Jaguar.
What was the question? Yeah?
The question was about whether Sandy Pope's experience heading a local of a little over 1,000 people was adequate for, you know, as experience for heading the international.
I don't agree with that. I don't think Sandy's ready for prime time. No disrespect to Sandy, for the sheer fact is that, look at my resume. That's why I'm running. I've never had opposition. I've always been elected to all these posts within the Teamsters organization. You can't take my resume and compare it to Hoffa's or Sandy's. I always tell everybody out there, I says, Hoffa wishes he had my resume. And I'm very proud of it because I've done it very forcefully but with honor when I've represented the membership throughout the United States and Canada. And I got to tell you something is that you got to know what you're doing at the bargaining table, because this day and age, they come after you fast, hard, and they don't care what they do to their employees. And you got to be ready to protect their members, your members.
Okay. And response from Ken Hall.
Fred, you need to check your bio. You've claimed in your magazine to be the principal officer of Local 662. I don't think you are, but Sandy talks about she's going to be the chief bargainer. Well, that's curious to me, because in New Jersey, at a large UPS facility, you told those members I was going to negotiate the UPS contract if you won. And you told the people in Los Angeles, in Local 396, you told those UPS members the same thing, that I was going to negotiate the contract with your supervision. Now, I hear you fired me in Indiana, but I would like to know, it's a big decision, and frankly, I've been thinking about this negotiations for a long time. You can't wait till it's time to negotiate it. Do you have, while you're not willing to take a position on what to do with those members and their pension funds, are you willing to tell us tonight who will be negotiating that contract?
Sure.
We're kind of running out of time, so do you want to take a few seconds just to talk about that contract?
Are you looking at me?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I intend to be at the head of the table. I never said that you were going to be in charge of bargaining, and I am sure that I told people that you're going to be Secretary-Treasurer of the union, likely, which is a very big, very important job in this union. You have a lot of experience, and I expect to have you there involved, because I know that anyone, any local leader or any international officer that's been involved with UPS is going to be asked to help in this negotiations, which is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we face.
Okay. All right. Question to Ken Hall, and it comes from Ryan Grimm.
Sure. So last fall out in California, the local 2865, mostly representing TAs and other UC graduate students, overthrew the established board, the executive board, with a very militant message. Now, at the same time out there are about 15,000 clerical workers that have recently affiliated with the Teamsters but don't have a contract yet. Should those clerical workers ally themselves with this more militant executive board, or do you think that they should continue to operate more autonomously?
Well, I think they have their own local union, and our union is, contrary to what you may hear, is bottom up. And so obviously they're going to have the opportunity to form their own strategies, but they are going to be getting assistance, as they are now, from our public employees division that Fred doesn't seem to know where it is now, but one of the places they are is out there